Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of season 4 of the animated TV series South Park. Now, South Park is a show that I can say I am at the very least a casual fan of. I'm not a super fan of the show by any means. I've not watched every season and every episode multiple times. In fact, this was the first time I saw some of the episodes in this season. But I do have to admit that I have a lot of fond memories of watching this show on Comedy Central when I was a teen, and it is a show that I do get a kick out of. And I think for the most part, I would say this was a relatively solid, decent season of the show. But before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on season 4, I want to give a special shout out to Ryan for requesting this review. And if there is another TV show, film, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal, my Patreon, or my Cash App. The links to all three are in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your requests as soon as I possibly can. Now, season 4 of South Park is considered by many to be the point where the show really started to evolve into what a lot of people call the best form of the show. Because the first 3 seasons, Matt Stone and Trey Parker were still trying to find their footing, still trying to figure out the formula, so to speak. And season 4 is when they really started to finalize that. They really started to figure out what worked and what didn't. And then it just took off from there. And each season afterwards, for a good chunk of the show's run, was just better than the last. Like it was one of those shows where it's a bit of a rough start, but once you get to this season and all the way up to like season 10 or 15, you're in for a good time. And this is also the first season to not feature Mary Kay Bergman as a series regular, because unfortunately she died via suicide in 1999 in November. So she was not available to work on the show anymore. And that is just, it's such a sad story about her, to be perfectly honest. And may she rest in peace. And she was replaced by a couple different voice actresses, Eliza Schneider and Mona Marshall, who took over for her and voiced all the female characters. And as usual, the cast is comprised mostly of Trey Parker, Matt Stone, who do the majority of the voices, and Isaac Hayes, who voices Chef. So you got Trey, who comes back as Stan and Cartman, and Randy, Mr. Garrison, Clyde, Mr. Hankey, Mr. Mackey, Stotch, Timmy, and Philip. Matt Stone is back as Kyle, Kenny, Butters, Gerald, Stewart, Pip, Craig, Jimbo, Terrence, and Jesus. And then Elijah Schneider and Elijah Schneider and Mona Marshall. My bad. They portray Leanne Cartman, Shelley Marsh, Sharon Marsh, Mayor McDaniels, Carol McCormick, Wendy Testaberger, Principal Victoria, Miss Crabtree, Sheila, and Linda. And I will admit, Eliza and Mona are the ones that I would probably say I remember the most in terms of their voiceover work. But I still feel that Mary Kay did a good job and would have continued to have done a good job if she hadn't taken her own life. But Mona and Eliza still came in and really did an admirable job considering the circumstances. And Trey and Matt are just they're really talented voice actors in their own right. Like they still continue to pick up where they left off from seasons 1 through 3, and they've just really honed their voiceover skills even more at this point with the main cast. So the voiceover work is still really strong. The animation quality throughout the season is on par with most of the other episodes of the show. I mean, this is the only season to be animated with a Power Animator before they switched to Maya. But I can barely even tell the difference, to be honest, between the Maya episodes and the Power Animated ones. Because this is a show that really it is something that uses a lot of cheap animation, so it's not really something that suffers that much. And I think directing wise, even though there's like a handful of different directors who directed episodes of this season, there's not a lot of crazy stuff either when it comes to the camera work or the movement of the camera and the framing and a lot of other things involving animation direction. But it is consistently good and consistently solid throughout, like most of the show. Um Now, like I said earlier, this season, well, I don't know if I actually did mention how long the season it is, but it has 17 episodes, and the first episode is called "The Tooth Fairy's Tats." And this one is directed by Trey Parker, written by Trey Parker, Matt Stone, and Nancy M. Pimental. And this is the last episode that actually had another writer who was credited for working on the episode. Because after this, it was just Trey and Matt who wrote everything until like a couple episodes way later on. And I don't know if it's because Nancy is involved with this script or what, but this was honestly one of my favorite episodes of the first season. It's also one that I will have to admit I do have some nostalgia for because I do remember seeing this one more than once when I was younger. But even without the nostalgia factor, this is still a good episode. And this one deals with the boys trying to get rich off of a scheme involving the Tooth Fairy, where Cartman decides he's going to fake him losing teeth so then his mom will give him Tooth Fairy money. And he decides once his mom's resources are exhausted and she can't pay him anymore, that he's going to come up with a different way to get more money. And so he comes up with a way of masquerading and dressing up as a tooth fairy and having his friends go around and trick other kids in South Park and make them think that the tooth fairy has arrived, and then they go in and steal the money from under their pillow. Well, you know Cartman, he's greedy. He's a greedy, fat little bastard. So he's not willing to just settle for what he's getting here because he wants that Sega Dreamcast. So he decides to go to a rich part of town and do the scheme there. But then he runs into a group of kids who are doing the same thing. That leads to him and the boys getting essentially knocked out and kidnapped and then taken to the hideout of this tooth boss called Loogie, who is voiced by Richard Belzer, who does an incredible job in this. And this character is just a straight up parody of Don Corleone from The Godfather. And it's this tooth mafia. And it's really quite clever. It's a really fun parody of the mob. And then you have some stuff involving the American Dental Association and their investigation of what's going on with all these uh, stories from parents talking about how their kids are losing an incredible amount of teeth, and so that brings attention to this tooth racket, and so they decide to try to take action to bust it. And then you also have something going on with Kyle, where Kyle is pondering his existence after his parents tell him about the tooth fairy and how the tooth fairy is not real. And so that causes him to start thinking about whether or not he's real. And there's some really hilarious bits of writing there where he's just reading all these different things about existentialism, and all the other kids are like, "Shut up, Kyle." And then eventually Kyle comes to the conclusion that he doesn't exist and he's not real, and then he disappears, and then he reappears, and he's like halfway in between reality and some other dimension, and there's all these different things that pop out, including this giant rooster that one of the ADA guys was trying to claim was responsible for stealing all the teeth. So of course there's that guy going, "I told you so," because this is all during a big bust that the ADA set up to bust the tooth racket. Uh, and it's just a fun idea. It's really well executed, and the dialogue is funny. The banter between all the kids is great. I genuinely really enjoy the Tooth Fairy's Tats. Now, episode 2 is called Cartman's Silly Hate Crime. This is another good one. This one is directed by Trey Parker and Eric Stu, and written by Trey Parker. And this one, it deals with Cartman hitting Token in the head with a rock. Because of the change in laws, he then gets arrested after the FBI agents claim that he committed a hate crime. And so he gets sent to like a maximum security juvenile hall, and he meets some kid named Romper Stomper. And because of everything that's going on, uh, his friends, the boys, are trying to find a way to get him out. They unsuccessfully try to give him a cake with a nail file in it, but then Cartman tells them that they can't take any outside food in, and so I think it's Kyle again. It's either Kyle or Stan who has this freak out moment where he's speaking in like a different dialect, almost like gibberish, because he's trying not to give away the fact that there's a nail file. And so he's just speaking in that covert way and just ranting about how he can't give him the nail file, and instead they give him cigarettes, so he can get Romper Stomper to help break him out. But of course, Romper Stomper isn't necessarily willing to do that. Uh, and initially, it's because Cartman assumes that he's not willing to help him because Cartman flushes the cigarettes down the toilet once he poops them out after a lot of effort. But actually, when Cartman smuggles in a game of like tic-tac-throw in his ass, Romper Stomper then tells him, how he doesn't want to help him because he was never planning on doing that. But eventually something happens and Romper Stomper feels bad because Cartman starts crying and wants his mom, and then he decides to help Cartman. All the while, the boys are trying to work with the government, and the local government in particular, to try to change the laws so that he can get released. And they're also trying to work with Token, so then Token can say that he's okay and that he doesn't want Cartman to be incarcerated for a hate crime. And there's some great social commentary in this episode, some really good writing by Trey Parker, where Token and the kids, they come up with this really convincing argument about how hate crime laws are not necessarily the best thing. And even people who saw the presentation were like, "That's better than anything I've seen in the what is it, like the Senate or in court in the past 10 years." But they still I think they still don't decide to go through with it. And I'm trying to remember exactly how they change everything. Because, yeah, they declare it a savage hypocrisy. They argue that all forms of crime warrant some sort of hate and that the laws only serve to encourage discrimination. Further, the governor's impressed, claiming it makes more sense than anything else he's heard in the last 3 years because they go to the governor of Colorado to try to, change everything. And also, there's a lot of stuff going on in terms of the kids were challenged by the girls for a sled race at the start of this episode. And the boys try to replace Cartman, but without Cartman's big fat ass, they aren't fast enough. But eventually, because of the way that the boys eloquently defended Cartman and broke down hate crime laws, the governor does eventually call the prison and pardons Cartman, but only after he and Romper Stomper already broke out of jail. And the boys and the girls wind up doing their sled race, and Cartman winds up showing up at the last minute. The boys look like they're going to lose, but then Cartman takes Romper Stomper's shoes that Romper Stomper gave him and throws them at one of the girls' heads, and then they go flying off Phil Collins Hill, and they crash, and then one of the girls gets eaten by a bear, and the boys win. And there's also some other stuff going on in terms of like different sort of references to pop culture in this episode that was pretty clever, like Disneyland, and Cartman's prison uniform number is the police ID in Blade Runner. There's a reference to the white Bronco that O.J. Simpson was in during the Simpson trial when he was trying to run away from police, because there wound up being like a low speed chase with Kenny's go-go action Bronco with him and Cartman, which was honestly really funny. So yeah, this is another good one, I have to admit. Episode 3 is called Timmy 2000, and it's also known as Timmy. And this one is written and directed by Trey Parker. And this is an episode that apparently a lot of people really enjoy. Teach their own. I don't like this episode. I think this is honestly one of the weaker episodes of this season. First off, I'm not a big fan of Timmy to begin with. I have nothing against or any issues whatsoever with handicapped people. But Timmy is a character. I never got the appeal. I never understood why this character was funny. He just did a few silly things every now and then and said Timmy and in different ways. And that's literally all the character is. It is one of the most one-note characters out of the entire show. And an episode primarily focused on him is in my opinion also going to be very one note, and it was because Timmy, he winds up joining this band that Skylar has set up called Lords of the Underworld, and because Timmy has joined the band, they wind up getting all of his success and they win Battle of the Bands. While all of this is going on, the kids in South Park are mistakenly diagnosed with ADHD, with ADD, because of the fact that they find The Great Gatsby to be boring. And that aspect of the script I thought was pretty clever in terms of how it's satirizing how people in the medical department, people in the pharmaceutical uh, area were taking advantage of kids and prescribing Ritalin at insane amounts at the time. And that to me is where the best aspects of this script are and the best aspects of this episode are. And there are some fun, crazy, bizarre stuff involving that, like how if you're on Ritalin for too long, you start hallucinating creepy Christina Aguilera creatures. But other than that, I don't think the stuff with Lords of the Underworld is even really that funny. Their music isn't even really that good, even with Timmy being a part of it. And there's also a lot of really petty pot shots at Phil Collins in this episode. And they are so forced and so clearly thrown in there because Matt Stone and Trey Parker got butt hurt that Phil Collins won the Oscar for his song "You'll Be in My Heart" from Tarzan over "Blame Canada" from the South Park movie. The only reason why Phil Collins is just completely shit on in this episode, considered to be this lame musician, this talentless hack, sellout, to the point where he's talking about his hit song that he won the Oscar for called "You'll Be in Me." Get it? You know, "You'll be in my heart," but instead it's "You'll be in me," as in be in my ass. And then there's even a scene where he gets the Oscar shoved up his ass later on in the episode. And he acts like such a prick throughout the entire episode, trying to split Timmy apart from his band by spreading rumors about Timmy to Skylar and trying to prop Skylar up and get him to break the band apart because he's jealous. And to me, this was a really lazy attempt at satirizing a celebrity. And normally, Matt Stone and Trey Parker do a good job with that. But the way that they handled it with Phil was lazy. It was uninspired and it was just mean spirited. And it was clearly just them being butthurt, whiny little babies that they didn't win the Oscar over Phil Collins and his song from Tarzan. And you know what? I like Blame Canada and I do like the South Park movie, but "You'll Be in My Heart" is a great song. It's not one of Phil Collins's best songs to me, but it's still a good song. And I think it deserved the Oscar over Blame Canada. It's a better song than Blame Canada is. And Phil made it as a tribute to his daughter that was just born. It was his song celebrating the birth of his daughter. So he didn't do it as a sellout thing. He did it as a way to give back to his daughter who was just born, and I think that's really sweet. And I think the song is has a very sweet, kind-hearted nature to it that still rings true. Blame Canada is just okay. Canada sucks. Like I guess. Like I just felt like Blame Canada was always a song that I only liked somewhat. I never understood like the massive amount of hype for it. Honestly, I like the song "Circle of Pooh" from the finale of this season more than Blame Canada. And there's other South Park songs I definitely like a lot more than Blame Canada, like the montage song. I legitimately think that's a better song. Even songs from the movie, like the Resistance song, is better than Blame Canada to me. But yeah, I was just really taken aback by the just petty butthurt whining by Trey Parker by Matt Stone and Trey Parker. I was just like, really? Yeah, you lost. Get over it. Like, why do you need to make an entire subplot of an episode just shitting on Phil Collins? I mean, there's so many other better targets for lame musicians, like Kenny G or Michael Bolton or John Tesh or Yanni or a bunch of other options. And you went with Phil Collins as this terminally lame musician. The only reason why you did that is because you lost the Oscar. Let's just be honest here. So it also didn't help that it wasn't funny. I didn't find the stuff with Timmy funny. I didn't find the stuff with the Lords of the Underworld funny. I didn't find the Phil Collins jokes funny. And the only thing that I remotely found to be somewhat humorous or enjoyable or interesting was the ADD subplot. But other than that, there really wasn't a lot about this episode that I liked. Then you have episode 4, which is called Contorting Quintuplets, or just Quintuplets. And this one deals with a pretty funny and spot on parody of Cirque du Soleil at the start of the episode. And I know this because I've been to multiple Cirque du Soleil shows over my lifetime. I enjoyed them. They were fun. They were definitely a spectacle, but they are absolutely an acquired taste. And I could see how some people could think that they're lame and they're boring. And I didn't like the clowns either. So I definitely do side with with poor I'm trying to remember. I think it was Stan. Yeah, it was Stan. Yeah, I side with Stan when he got sprayed with water by the clown. And that was always something I was afraid of whenever I went to a show, and I was always dreading, and I was always like, no, don't pick me. Like when I was a kid, I'm like, don't pick me. I don't want any water sprayed on me. I don't want the clown to mess with me. Go away. So I definitely do. I do connect with that. And what happens is the quintuplets that the boys were really impressed with, they wind up running away. They were supposed to go back to Romania, but they decided to stay. And their grandmother uh, and the quintuplets, they wind up staying with Stan and his family. And so this starts to spark some controversy with Romania, because Romania is like, hey, no, those are our girls. We want them back. So they start to take measures to try to convince the American government to send the quintuplets back. And of course, the Americans are also like, no, we love them. They're adorable. They're ours now. And they want to stay. And so it ultimately leads to a very chaotic climax involving the quintuplets getting taken away. And I think, yeah, Stan's house gets blown up uh, because the American government comes in along with Janet Reno dressed like an Easter bunny and just completely blows the house up and takes the girls. But then there's also this other thing going on with Kenny, who he is trying to learn how to sing better because Cartman came up with a plan to start their own Cirque du Soleil with the quintuplets. Initially, they were going to do it without them, and the boys were trying to practice and do it themselves, but they suck. And of course, Cartman blames it on Kenny. And Kenny then decides to take lessons to try to become a better singer, listens to some CDs, but then when he goes to take some actual lessons from a vocal trainer, the vocal trainer's like, "Hey, you got to go to some school in Europe to get really good." And so he and his mom decide to panhandle. Essentially, Kenny sings and then earns money at different destinations that they're trying to get to until they eventually get to Europe and they wind up in Romania. He enrolls in a Romanian school. He becomes this really good singer. But because it's Romania and everybody's poor there, Kenny and his mom's $200 goes a long way. So they decide, after some thinking, that they want to stay there. And the Romanians want them to stay there too because Kenny's become really good at singing. But what happens next is just a repeat of the whole thing that was going on with the custody battle over the quintuplets, where now Kenny's dad is talking about how much he misses Kenny and he wants him back. And so then the government arrives again and takes Kenny away. And it's a really good satire of this kind of stuff involving politics and custody and people from another country trying to stay in America. And I'm wondering if this was intended to be like a reference. It is. It's intended to be a reference about Elian Gonzalez, because that was a thing that was going on. Elian Gonzalez was taken from his Miami relative's home the Saturday before Easter 2000. So Parker and Stone changed some things that they had in the script, so it would reflect that. And it was a good satire of just the craziness surrounding that whole thing with Elian. Episode 5 is called Cartman Joins NAMBLA. And this one is directed by Eric Stowe and written by Trey Parker. And this features a very messed up concept. It's really an episode about pedos. And considering the subject matter, it's something that easily could have come across as just unfunny. But the writing is actually really clever. And I actually found it to be a rather enjoyable episode despite the disturbing subject matter. And a lot of it just has to do with Cartman just being such a complete and utter dumbass. Because Cartman, he gets sick of his friends because he thinks they're not mature enough. So then he goes on a chat room and starts talking about how he wants to meet mature adults. So then that just winds up getting a bunch of pedophiles who want to talk to him. And he like meets one of them at a diner, and the pedophile's offering him candy and asking if he likes back rubs. And Cartman is such an idiot that he just doesn't really see anything wrong about it. And then the FBI shows up and arrests the guy, and Cartman is just he's just more upset that he arrested somebody who he thinks that could have been his friend. And then Cartman goes back on the chat room, says the same things, winds up meeting up with another mature adult, but this time it happens to be Mr. Garrison. So of course Mr. Garrison is like, "Oh, it's not what you think," and Cartman's like, "Oh, I guess you can be my friend." And then Garrison gets arrested, and of course Garrison's trying to blame Cartman for everything. And then there's also this other subplot going on with Kenny where he doesn't want his parents to have another kid. So he's going to all these extreme lengths to try to make it so his parents don't have another child. But then that basically is just a way to explain how Kenny just keeps regenerating throughout the series. It was honestly pretty clever. Pretty clever way to do that. And Cartman winds up becoming a poster child for NAMBLA, which is an actual organization. It's the North American Man Boy Love Association. Yeah, it's pretty messed up. And he becomes this poster child for them. And he's just still completely unaware because he's such a dumbass. And he invites other kids from South Park to join him at this function or this meetup with NAMBLA. And Stan and Kyle are not invited because of a beef with Cartman, but they find a way to get in anyway. Then they quickly realize that there's something sinister going on with this NAMBLA association, and they're not what they seem, and they're a bunch of pedos. And the pedos try to take the kids up to their rooms, but the kids wind up figuring it out real quick and they run away. And then it actually becomes like something out of a Scooby Doo cartoon with all the people running out of different doors. And the cops are also showing up. The feds are showing up trying to bust the pedos. The kids are trying to run away. Uh, Kenny and his parents are also around as well, and Kenny's trying to still go after and suck the baby out of his mom's uterus with a plunger. And eventually the pedos do get their comeuppance, and they try to defend themselves. And I love the way that Stan and Kyle just shut them down. So it's some really good writing by Trey Parker, where they're trying to defend themselves with some kind of bullshit, and then Stan and Kyle are like, "Yeah, but you have sex with boys." Like, you're fucked up. Like, you're a bunch of sick fucks. You have sex with boys. It's like, shut up. There's no defense for this. So I love that. That was great. That's a big part of why I really like this episode is despite the subject matter and it's disturbing and it is in a lot of ways kind of offensive, they did handle it in a humorous, satirical way, but when they needed to shut that shit down, they shut it down. And I think that that's definitely something that's commendable to me. They didn't leave any opening whatsoever for this being acceptable. The next episode is episode 6, and this one is called Cherokee Hair Tampons. This is such an absurd title, but this is a brilliant episode to me. I think this is this is a great episode, and it's definitely one of my favorites from this season. Uh, Stan, he has to get Cartman to donate one of his kidneys to save Kyle's life because Kyle is really sick. Of course, since it's Cartman, Cartman doesn't want to do anything to save uh, Kyle. And there's also a lot of stuff going on in the town where alternative medicine charlatans have opened up a shop, and now they're convincing the parents that alternative medicine, new age medicine, uh, can save Kyle's life and can also heal illnesses and other stuff. And I love how the woman who runs the shop is literally called Misinformation, and she has Native American coworkers, but they're not really Native American. It's just Cheech and Chong. They don't play Cheech and Chong, but they might as well be because they look exactly like Cheech and Chong from the Cheech and Chong movies, and it's voiced by Cheech. The characters are voiced by Cheech Marin and Tommy Chong, so it's just really cool to see those two have a cameo in South Park. Like that is pretty awesome, and they're really funny in this. And Mr. Garrison, he becomes a romance novelist after getting fired from teaching for his incompetence and his actions in the previous episode, for being arrested for potentially soliciting a minor. And his book is popular, but it's popular for, a certain clientele because he's trying to write a romance novel that's supposed to be romantic for women, but he's writing about penises constantly, and it became like a huge bestseller for the gay audience. And you have this drama going on with the townsfolk and the new age medicine thing, and there's even like a live action commercial parody of the tampons, which I was really surprised by. I'm always surprised and just kind of just whoa, just startled by anything live action in South Park. I know it's a thing in South Park, but it's just whenever that happens, it definitely is something that definitely does throw me for a bit of a loop. And it definitely did here because I did not expect it at all. And eventually it gets to the point where Kyle is so sick that he's about to die. And then even Cheech and Chong are like, hey, he's sick, man. He's really sick. You better take him to a hospital. And of course, Cartman still has not agreed to give his kidney away because he wants to give it away for a price, and the price is $10 million. And Stan's like, I don't know how to get that kind of money, and he tries to uh, take Cartman's kidney by force with the help of Butters with a surprise surgery one night, but Cartman's prepared for that with a kidney blocker 5000 that he's bought that's basically is like a vest with a metal vest with locks on it to prevent people from stealing his kidney. But the plan that Stan and the doctor come up with to save Kyle is really clever, and it's honestly executed in such a hilarious and cathartic fashion because they set it up where it looks like Cartman's kidney blocker 5000 was removed during the night later on, and there's blood, and his kidney was taken, and he gets his kidney back from Kyle, I mean from Stan, that was for Kyle, and then he goes to the doctor to get his kidney put back in, and the doctor has him sign a form, to do so. But actually, it was a form that was a release form for him to go into surgery to give Kyle his kidney. And then the end of the episode is just Cartman realizing that he got screwed and he got tricked and he's just pissed, and Kyle is alive. And there's also the other stuff with well, no, that's I was going back to the previous episode, but no, the end of the episode is that where Cartman's just throwing a fit, and it's very cathartic because like serves you right, you fat ass. uh but yeah, I really like that episode. I mean, the Cheech and Chong cameo just put it over the top for me. Episode 7 is called Chef Goes Nanners, and that one is directed by Trey Parker and Eric Stowe and written by Trey Parker. And by the way, Cherokee Hair Tampons was also written and directed by Trey. And Chef Goes Nanners is another good one to me, mainly because of just how pointed and how good the social commentary is in this particular episode. Because Chef winds up protesting against the racist imagery on the South Park flag throughout this episode. And that's the main plot. It's a controversy about the South Park flag, which is definitely trying to be a parallel to the Confederate flag. And they're talking about its history. Oh, you can't take it down because it's a part of our history. Oh, and there's this whole thing that eventually starts with South Park, and the kids wind up being tasked with a debate where they will be on both sides. The side that's for the flag staying and for the flag being changed. And then because the South Park government is so inept, they decide to put the decision to change the flag in the hands of these kids and this debate. So this debate is now immensely important. And of course, Chef is understandably pissed at the kids who are siding with the flag staying as it is, because it is an absolutely 100% racist flag. And that's the thing that makes the satire so good, is like it's in your face about it. The flag shows like a clearly what is intended to be a black person who's being hung, and there's a bunch of white people around him. And you got people trying to say that, oh, it's a part of our history and it's fine, and it doesn't need to be changed. And then you're looking at it and you're like, no, this clearly needs to be changed. This is just wrong. uh but what happens by the end of the episode is brilliant to me, because ultimately the flag does get changed, but the only thing that gets changed is that there's two more black people and there's like some other colors for the different people in the flag. And I'm like, that is so fucking true. That is so spot on. Because that's what happens most of the time is, okay, this stuff gets changed. We want to change a little bit because we don't want to offend the other side who doesn't want the flag to be changed. So we're going to change it a little to the point where we can please both sides. But in my opinion, like that's wrong too. Like you shouldn't please both sides in an instance like this that is clearly racist. Like there's no doubt about it. And I think that's really what the episode is definitely trying to get across. I mean, there's the whole stuff with the KKK and how there's this whole controversy about, hey, they decide to take the side after some convincing from people who were on the side of the flag staying the way it is. They decided to change sides so then they could trick the KKK to be on the side of the flag changing, and the KKK actually agreed. So now the side of the flag being changed as the KKK on their side, and it just pointed out the silliness and the hypocrisy and the ridiculousness of the protesting and the debates and everything involving something that is clearly just wrong, and how both sides have their own issues, and how the issue itself is just very clearly one way. but it's considered to be something that can be debated. Like it was it was really quite clever and really good satire. Episode 8 I didn't think was as good as 7 or even episode 6, but it was still fun to watch. This one is called Something You Can Do With Your Finger. This one is written and directed by Trey Parker, and this is a boy band parody. That's really what this episode is. It deals with Cartman roping Stan, Kyle, and Kenny into creating a boy band called Finger Bang because he's trying to get $10 million still. Wendy winds up joining the band, but of course, in order to do so, she has to pose as a boy. And this definitely is not what Cartman had planned, but because nobody else is as talented as she is, he just goes along with it. Stan's father, Randy, is pissed though. He's upset. He's trying to do everything he can to prevent Stan from joining the band because you find out that he actually was in a boy band previously. And he had all this fame and all this success, but then it didn't end well. And he's trying to make sure that Stan doesn't wind up experiencing the same pain and being taken advantage of like he was. And that's a nice sweet moment, honestly, between Randy and Stan. And there's a good heart in this episode, despite, the silliness and, the boy band being called Finger Bang and the whole song, being about finger banging. And then the whole stuff where, Cartman is going to extreme lengths to get a spot at the mall to perform, and he's so delusional that once they actually do perform and barely get through one song, he thinks that he's already a celebrity. And I would say, if you're a fan of music parodies, this is definitely a fun watch. It's no Guitar Hero, though. Like, that's a much better music parody episode than this, but it's still enjoyable. Episodes 9 and 10 are actually a two-parter because episode 9 ends with a to be continued. And episode 9 is called Do the Handicapped Go to Hell? And episode 10 is called Probably. And both of them are written and directed by Trey Parker. And to me personally, there's like half a good episode between the two of these episodes because there's a running subplot for there's actually two running subplots for both of these episodes, and one I really like and the other I don't really care for at all. The first subplot is the one that I do really enjoy and I think is just more scathing, hilarious social commentary and satire. This time Trey Parker is taking aim at religion and specifically the Catholic faith, and the boys are scared by their priest at church one morning who's going all fire and brimstone talking about how they're going to go to hell, and so they're understandably scared, and now they're questioning whether or not Timmy and Ike or Kyle are going to be able to go to heaven because Timmy is handicapped and he can only say Timmy, and Ike and Kyle are Jews, and they mention this to their pastor, and he essentially confirms that they're going to go to hell. So then the boys decide to go to extreme lengths to try to make sure that they don't go to hell. So Ike and Kyle are trying to do all that they can to renounce their Jewish faith. Timmy, they're trying to do what they can to help him, and they go to a confession, and Cartman goes to the confession booth and confesses his sins, and he starts confessing all these different horrible things he did to the priest who is literally in the confession booth listening to all of this. And then the priest just snaps and smashes his arms through the confession booth and tries to strangle Cartman to death. Cartman gets away. He gets out of the priest's grasp, and then he goes and talks to the boys later, and he's like, "I got touched by the hands of God." I just the way that was set up just cracks me up. I just think it's really funny. And Cartman then eventually decides to transition into a fire and brimstone preacher himself. And he starts preaching on the side of the street and getting all the kids to join his congregation, and that's what sets up the second parter. The second part of this two-part episode. The other subplot involves Satan and Saddam Hussein. Saddam goes back to hell, and then he tries to get back with Satan, but Satan's with this other guy, and I didn't give a shit. I never really got into the whole gay Satan having gay sex with Saddam Hussein thing that Matt Stone and Trey Parker were doing. I didn't think it was that funny, and I don't think it was that smart. And it to me, it was just honestly pretty boring in comparison to the whole stuff with the kids and uh, Cartman becoming a fire and brimstone preacher. And it continued into Probably, where the stuff with Saddam and his gay lovers did not give a flying fuck about, did not even find remotely entertaining. But then the whole stuff with Cartman and the boys starting their own church, and then Cartman just becoming a televangelist preacher, essentially, who's just taking advantage of his congregation and sucking them dry and taking their money and knocking them out in a way to try to cure them of their ills. That was easily the best part of this episode. And then Jesus actually comes back and then is like, "Hey, you guys are wrong." So yeah, that was a good one. At least when it comes to that particular part of this two-part episode, the subplot with the boys starting their own religion and questioning the religion, and it really was a very pointed satire at the whole fire and brimstone preaching and the whole like you're going to go to hell if you don't do this. The whole way that some faiths can be just really controlling, and it was definitely a good shot, pretty on target shot at all of that. But the Saddam Hussein and Satan, what it was, a gay lover triangle drama soap opera bullshit, that sucked. Episode 11 is called Fourth Grade, and this is the first time that you see a new intro for the show. Now the boys are in fourth grade. So there's a new, like, over the top intro for the show with updated graphics, including a clip at the end of some guy who's jumping away from an explosion that is from some really crappy direct to video sci fi action film called Dark Drive. And this one, I was there for me. The kids, they realize that fourth grade sucks, and so they want to go back to the third grade, so they get a bunch of nerds to create a time machine out of Timmy's wheelchair. They don't like fourth grade because they really can't get into their teacher, Miss Chokes on Dick. Get it? Because her name is Chokes on Dick. And that whole character I always hated. Like, you go from Mr. Garrison to Miss Chokes on Dick. First off, her voice is like nails on a chalkboard. And then you just have this running gag with her tits. Oh, she's got saggy titties. She's got floppy titties. And it's hilarious because you can see her nipples when she goes up, when she reaches her arms too high in the air. Like, I thought that was really low hanging fruit, uh, to say the least. And Mr. Garrison, he's a hermit who lives in the mountains because he's not able to come to terms with who he is and his homosexuality. And Miss Chokes on Dick goes in and searches for him because she's having a hard time controlling the students. And then it's like a parody return of Empire Strikes Back when Yoda trained Luke, and you have this scene where Mr. Garrison goes inside of the tree and sees himself, and it's his gay self, and it was all right, but I definitely wouldn't say it was one of my favorites from this season. And then eventually, Timmy actually does travel in through time after a really lame attempted parody at Speed, and the boys are actually able to potentially go into the wormhole and go back to the third grade because the nerds create another time machine and it actually works. But then they decide not to because they're stunned by Miss Chokes on Dick actually responding and offering a proper rebuttal to Cartman's antics because Cartman tells Miss Chokes on Dick to suck his balls, and then she says, "Present them," and then they're all like stunned. I was like, "Yeah, all right, whatever." It was just there for me. Episode 12, though, I liked a lot more, and this was another episode from this season that I really enjoyed. This one is called Trapper Keeper, and this one was written and directed by Trey Parker again. And Cartman got a new trapper keeper that's like super fancy, has all these different gadgets and technological uh, uh, improvements. And what happens is a robot from the future winds up arriving in South Park, and he's trying to get Cartman's Trapper Keeper because he's trying to destroy it to prevent a apocalyptic future straight out of the Terminator, where the Trapper Keeper becomes sentient and absorbs all of these different bits of technology and different things and becomes its own monstrous combination of technology and flesh, and it it winds up taking over the world. So this robot from the future is sent to try to destroy it. There's also this other stuff going on with Mr. Garrison's kindergarten class because now he's been demoted to kindergarten, and they're trying to hold an election for class president between Ike and this other kid. But but what happens is the other kid, he is in his group of kids who uh they don't like the result. Uh uh and that other kid is Fillmore, by the way. So Fillmore and his group of voters don't like the result, so they want to recount, and so it just becomes this mess between Ike and Fillmore, and it goes back and forth, all these different recounts, and it's a parody of something that actually happened at the time with Al Gore and Bush when it comes to the whole thing involving that, and it's a really great satire of that. It's really funny, by the way. But the stuff involving the Trapper Keeper is also really good. So this is one where you have two subplots that are equally hilarious and equally well written, and the Trapper Keeper stuff, like it's not, it's just so original and funny and hilarious because then it just completely goes into insane crazy town, because then it like gets to the point where it's not only referencing Terminator, it's also referencing Akira, it's also having references to 2001: A Space Odyssey. There's a cameo by Rosie O'Donnell, and it has everything that you want out of a genuinely classic and great South Park episode. So yeah, I really really enjoy that one. That honestly, next to Cherokee hair tampons, that might be my favorite episode of this season. Now, episode 13 is another holiday episode. This is a Thanksgiving episode. It's called Helen, Keller, the Musical, and it's written and directed by Trey Parker. And it's another Timmy centric episode. It's Matt Stone and Trey Parker's attempt to try to make a Thanksgiving Charlie Brown special, basically, where Timmy finds a turkey that he calls Gobbles, but the turkey's, handicapped and messed up, and That makes it so the chances of this turkey being in the play are slim because a fancier turkey is brought in who could do all these tricks. Butters is telling the other fourth graders about the kindergartners' play and how much better it is. So then the fourth graders are doing all this crazy stuff to up the stakes, add different musical numbers, and it's all for naught at the end because the kindergartners' play sucked, which I saw coming, but it was still the reaction from the kids when Butters uh, showed them the kindergartners' play, or when they saw the kindergartners' play, is pretty funny. I had some enjoyment from this episode, not a ton though. I would say the best part that I remember the most is when Cartman closes his eyes because he's supposed to try to get into character of get into the mindset of Helen Keller, and it's just this absolute bit of nightmare fuel that even has footage from a crappy sci-fi horror movie called Inseminoid. But other than that, a lot of this was just kind of generic to me. And like I said, it was another Timmy centric episode, which I'm not really a big fan of anyway. But it's miles better than what is easily the worst episode of the season to me. And also one of my least favorite episodes of South Park in general, out of the ones that I've seen. And this one is episode 14, Pip. This is a parody of Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. And not even Malcolm McDowell, who narrates this, can save this direct. This is pitiful. This is so boring, unfunny, and I don't like Pip at all either. Like, I think Pip is also another character that's incredibly lame and one note and sucks. I mean, look, my cat's even looking at me like, "What? You're talking about Pip? Yeah, Pip blows." I'm like, my cat is giving me the business. Just look at glaring at me like, ugh, Pip, ugh. But yeah, Pip, just terrible. It's an awful episode. The most memorable thing about it is robot monkeys, just garbage, unfunny. It's supposed to be funny because people speak in British accents. Reminds me of like the worst possible Monty Python skit or sketch, but it's extended for a interminable amount of time. And like I said, it's just a parody of Great Expectations. I've read the book like once. I'm not super well versed in it, but I know enough of the plot to get what they were trying to do. And it's not really that clever and it's not really that funny. And I don't understand what Trey was doing here because Trey Parker wrote this, directed by Eric Stowe. And I guess Trey was trying to do something different, which I will give the episode some credit for, but that only goes so far because it's an origin story of a character I don't like, and it's a parody of a book I never cared for. So, like, why would I ever want to watch this? And why would I ever want to watch this again? And for some reason, this episode is getting like a bunch of people trying to be like, it's not that bad. No, it is. It is that bad. And then some. It is easily probably the most boring episode of South Park. Now, episode 15 is called Fat Camp. And this was better than Pip, but it's still not what I would consider to be a particularly good episode. It was just okay. It was all right. This is basically South Park's Heavyweights, but nowhere near as good and nowhere near as funny because there's no Tony Perkis. It's written and directed by Trey Parker again, and the main plot deals with Cartman being sent to a fat camp, and Stan and Kyle, they come up with, I think they I don't remember exactly what they were doing. I don't remember why they hired some other kid to act like he's Cartman, who's lost all of his weight. There was a reason, but it was such a fairly forgettable episode. I honestly don't remember. And the stuff at the fat camp is typical. Cartman's with all the other fat kids. He's struggling to fit in, and then he comes up with this plan to take advantage of the fat kids by selling them sweets, and the fat kids just get fatter at fat camp. And then that gets the counselors in trouble, and then the parents come to pick up the kids, and then the kids feel guilty when they see how upset the counselors are and the parents are, and they tell the truth that Cartman manipulated them, and they've been eating food the entire camp, and then they feel bad, and so they decide to go to the camp and give it an effort and actually try to lose weight. Cartman tries to join them, but he's banned from the camp because of his actions, and so he throws a little bit of a tantrum. It really is. It's just a lame version of Heavyweights. Like, there's no Tony Perkis, there's no Perkisizing, there's no get off the scale, there's no your ass is wheatgrass or embrace the chi. Like, there's none of that stuff. Like, it's just lame. The counselors are boring too. Like, it absolutely is a poor version, like a rip off of Heavyweights. Like, there's even the stuff where they're eating food at fat camp. Like, even that is straight from Heavyweights. And then the rest of it is just some, honestly, pretty lame thing with Kenny trying to be Jackass. And then the most memorable thing about this episode, to be honest, is the finale, where the kid who was impersonating Cartman, Stan and Kyle get him to impersonate Kenny after Kenny gets killed, because Kenny has to make an appearance on his show. And there's this big fundraiser, this big show where Kenny's going to go inside of Miss Crabtree's uterus and stay there for 6 hours. And so the kid masquerading as Kenny, he goes up there. The 6 hours are up, and Miss Crabtree pushes out the non-Kenny, and the Kenny is dead. But then she also pushes out some random other kid with glasses. And then that's the end of the episode. Episode 16 is called The Wacky Molestation Adventure. Very unfortunate title. It's written and directed by Trey Parker. And I actually really like this episode, despite the uncomfortable nature of it. Because what happens is the kids, thanks to Cartman, they wind up providing false allegations to the police that their parents molested them. And that leads to the city of South Park being deserted and being left to the kids. Because now there's no parents anymore, because they're all in jail over these false sexual assault allegations. And then it turns into like a Mad Max meets Children of the Corn parody. And it's honestly really clever and really well written and well done, despite how screwed up and messed up this concept is. And there's a couple who wind up breaking down, their car breaks down, and they need some help. And then they wind up going through this apocalyptic wasteland that is now South Park, that's being ran by these kids because there's no adults anymore. The kids have created different parts of the town, and they've separated it with the line, and some parts of the town are worse than others, and they're sacrificing kids to the provider, which is a statue of John Elway that they've electrified, and they've forgotten about their past, and they're all, in a lot of ways, they're speaking like the kids from Beyond Thunderdome about the way back time. And it's so screwed in the head, but it's so funny, and it's honestly really well written. So yeah, I liked that episode quite a bit, despite it just being incredibly twisted. And then the last episode is a Christmas episode, which is episode 17, A Very Crappy Christmas. And this one is directed by Adrian Beard and written by Trey Parker. And This one deals with Mr. Hanky, who is now, I guess, semi-retired. Not semi-retired. He's retired from Christmas because he's busy with his family, and South Park has decided that they're over Christmas. So Kyle and the other kids, they decide to take it upon themselves to remind people of the spirit of Christmas by creating a Christmas cartoon, which is the spirit of Christmas, which is the original short that ultimately led to the creation of South Park. And I didn't really care for Mr. Hanky or his family. I never liked Mr. Hanky, but I will be honest, I did like the Circle of Pooh song because it was actually genuinely well written and catchy, and had some legitimately good work by Lewis Price, who is the singing voice for Cornwallis. Other than that, like everything else involving Mr. Hanky and his family, in my opinion, was shit. And the best parts of the show, though, this particular episode, is the meta stuff. You know, meta references to creating the show, and the callbacks, and talking about how they created the spirit of Christmas. And it felt like a nice bit of the show coming full circle. It gave me a vibe, though, of like a finale, like the last episode. Like if this show for some reason got too much controversy that Comedy Central dropped it, and it just never really had another season, this could have been a finale, like the last episode of the entire show, because everything comes full circle at the end. Like it kind of had that vibe to me. I don't think that was ever the case, but it definitely did remind me of that, because that happens a lot with those kind of shows where the finale, like the last episode, has callbacks to the first episode, or you know things come full circle, and there's a connection with the last episode, with the first episode, or with what started everything. And that's definitely what happens here with A Very Crappy Christmas. But there are some attempts to try to provide some satire of commercialism, but it's not anything you haven't seen before. And the best parts of it are really like the meta in jokes and references to, you know, the difficulties of creating the spirit of Christmas and creating South Park shorts or cartoons in general. And I definitely did enjoy that aspect of this episode, but I wouldn't say that this is like a classic or a great episode to me personally. I know a lot of people really like it, and I think a lot of people have nostalgia for it, like they have nostalgia for a lot of other South Park Christmas specials. But this one, I'm just kind of, I wouldn't say I'm there with it. I'm just in the position where I'm like, I like it, but I don't love it. But I would say out of a lot of the other Christmas specials that I've seen, this is probably one of the ones that feature Mr. Hanky that I think is the most tolerable. But that's not really saying that it's some kind of classic when it comes to the show either. But yeah, overall, I felt that this was a pretty decent season. There were only maybe like 2 episodes that I really didn't like. And there were a lot of episodes, though, that I thought were just kind of okay. And to be honest, there was only like maybe a handful of episodes that I really enjoyed. So it's got a pretty decent track record, all things considered, in terms of the quality of episodes and the success rate, because there's not too many episodes that were outright stinkers or were outright terrible. But I wouldn't say that this is one of my personal picks for one of the best seasons of the show. But it's a good start. They're really definitely starting to perfect the formula and really figure out how to make this show uh, better, and to allow this show to eventually reach the heights that it ultimately would in later seasons. But anyway, that is my thoughts on season 4 of South Park. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.